David. Is that right? I'm getting nods from around the audience. He's somebody who I would consider to be one of the superstars of nature photography, and he's based in Sussex, which is all the more amazing for us. Just to give you a little bit of flavour from my point of view about David, what we do know is that your love of nature started with woodlice, which is in your childhood. Did you have age 3? Did you have a favourite one?
I ate it.
So David ate his favourite woodlouse, and we do know that they are edible. And what is even more amazing is when you see his favourite woodlouse, imagine how he ate this. What we also know is that as David has become ever more superstar status, I'm not going to embarrass you too much with it, but we know that this is a typical place for David these days. This is where he's most comfortable, being tweaked and teased and wearing a leopard print shawl. This is just commonplace for you these days, isn't it, David?
That was just out the back.
Yeah, this is what we had to do to get him ready for today. He wouldn't appear without going through it. And what you may not know, because this only appears on a little bit of his Facebook page, is that he was touted by, I think it was Cadbury's and Lad Bible, to be the new face of twirl adverts, weren't you, David? Do you remember?
No.
It's on your Facebook. It's actually 2018. They approached him. They wanted you to be a nature photographer in a hive whilst they were doing it.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
Yeah. This is what happens when you reach the state that David's got. All of these things pass you by. I don't think you actually made the video because I've been trawling through Cadbury's to find it. But anyway, it would have been lovely had David indeed been the face of Twirl. Lad Bible, it was a new thing to me. It was clearly just part of David's world, but it's a website where you can find out all sorts of things, such as whether a twirl is actually a Cadbury's flake in a chocolate coating. Such important questions dealt with on the internet these days. Anyway, over to David. We thought we were going to get a talk about one thing, but David has done us a completely rejigged talk for today, which is entitled Henfield Hall to the Albert Hall and back.
Thank you. Hello everyone, thank you very much. So I've called this Henfield Hall to the Albert Hall and back because I think 10 years ago I gave a talk in Henfield Hall for SOS. And during that talk I talked about the role of a wildlife photographer. And so things have changed. I forgot about Twirl. But I'm going to show you a few things that have happened. You've had some highbrow stuff during the day today. This is going to be pretty lowbrow, so I'm glad those doors aren't open, just so people don't escape. But I'm always pretty nervous before a talk, or when I start a talk. And it always helps when I hear a lot of oohs and ahs if people see a nice image. So I'm going to just give up all responsibility for this talk and hand it all over to you. The more oohs and ahs you give, the better this talk will be for you. So let's move on to the first slide. There you go, you've got it. No more to start. So too loud. Let's move on. Non-native bird. Oh no. Start technical. There we go. It's taking a little while. Yeah. Wildlife photography is not all sweetness and light. Sometimes it's showing the brutality of things. This line was the winner. I know it's not a bird, but there are non-birds in this. This is the winner. The thing about stills photography, and I do move on from this later, the thing about stills photography is in that fraction of a second, you've got to create impact. And if I was just to show lions fighting, it would have a certain amount of impact. But this lion was the winner of the fight, and it shows the brutality of the natural world. He's actually still alive, and I photographed him 2 years ago, and this was originally taken about 10 years ago. So he's done okay. So this is how I started. This was my first camera, which I bought from a friend of the family for £35. Prince Flex is a Dixon's own version of Chinon, which is a camera no one knows anymore, but as it says, they're made in Japan. So this is a £35 camera. Later on I will talk about the camera I'm going to be using in 2 weeks and the value of that. But this is how I started, and people say, how do you get started in wildlife photography? It's sort of wherever, really. Wherever you start, just get doing it, and the power of mobile phones now is quite incredible. This was my very first wildlife image I took as a kid. So this is quite brave to actually show this. But it goes on to what Maya was talking about, the attitude and the passion. I didn't know what it was at the time, but I had inspirational dissatisfaction. So I would take rubbish images and I wouldn't give up. I would still carry on taking images. And I was so precocious. On the back I found telephoto plus 3 times converter, too dark. So I'm already critiquing my images, and that was at about the age 10. But I did start earlier than that. But it's this attitude of, people nowadays are looking for instant success on social media. They want to take up wildlife photography and they want 20,000 followers in a month. 20,000 followers don't pay your mortgage. You've got to learn your craft, and you've got to apply your passion, and you've got to really work at it. But inspirational dissatisfaction is essential. So I started learning my craft. This is not what I used when I was a kid. This is set up to show it. My first hide was just a canvas sheet. It was actually my dad's canvas trailer cover, and I stole it because it was army green, and I cut a hole in it with my camera lens, and with my dad, I was in real trouble with my dad because obviously the trailer would then just fill with water. But I sat outside a blue tit nest, and from that moment I was totally hooked on hide photography, and I've sort of developed that over the years. Here's an example of how I would spend my day. This is you can see that hide there, I assume. But hides are also from people as well, and I've been in hides like this. This was for a tree creeper, and I realised the hide was totally unnecessary, because tree creepers at the nest, you can sit right next to the nest, and the tree creepers will come in, they're bomb-proof. But sometimes you've got a lot of equipment, you're hiding it from people, which I'll go into in a bit more detail in a moment. There's me in slightly younger years learning the craft of baiting for birds. Baiting for birds is always controversial in wildlife filmmaking. People say, did you bait that? Isn't that cheating? How many people here feed their birds in the garden? Or how many people add to landfill, create nest boxes? I think we've done enough damage to the wildlife of this country that a little bit of baiting that is a win-win situation to get an image is not really cheating. And I never ever use captive animals. I only use wild animals. And so consequently, I've learned to, these are the early species I learned to photograph, so great spotted woodpeckers, which are surprisingly difficult to photograph naturally. We get them, I mean, the phenomenon is they've all started using feeders now, where they never used to. But now lots of people will photograph through the kitchen window of a great spotted woodpecker on a feeder, which is the really dullest image in the world. But to get them in a natural setting, it's quite, much more startling. But they've got a big fear circle. If you're photographing them from in the kitchen, all you've got to do is open the kitchen door, and they're gone. They've got what's known as a wide fear circle. They won't let you get close to them. But learning to hone the craft of field craft on birds like this, you develop generic wildlife skills that will take you anywhere in the world. And, oh, hold on. I'm moving on a bit too fast here. Take you anywhere in the world, and you can just apply those generic skills you've learned. So the skills I've learned with badgers, I applied to the giant anteaters, and I can now stalk to within about 2 meters of a giant anteater, so long as I'm up, downwind of them. If you're upwind, you're in a very dangerous situation in that. So life in a hide can be fun. It can be pretty damn cold. The longest I've spent is 14 hours in a hide at -5, which was painful, to say the least. This looks really brutal. This looks like Finland in the winter. It was actually my garden in Sussex. And right behind the hide was the conservatory. And I was getting cups of coffee ferried in. I even had Wi-Fi. So, but it looks brutal in there. But the changes in the weather, I mean, we had the Arctic bomb, weather bomb yesterday, or was it the day before? These changes in weather will change behaviour of birds as well. So the robin being sort of parasitic in following humans or wild boar or Tamworth pigs. In snow they can't get their food, so you're opportune on that situation. I've never worked with this robin before, and it just was following me around through the snow because I was kicking the snow up, and it could see where it could get food, and I just put my hand out, and I'd never worked with it before, and it just landed on my hand. And if you look for opportunities like that, you can work with other animals as well. And the wider panoply of animals you work with, the wider your skill base. And species that you would normally photograph in quite gentle situations, it looks a lot more brutal in this and a lot more dramatic. Snow like this rarely occurs in Sussex, and it didn't occur on this situation. This was where I just picked up loads of snow and just threw it at the birch log, just to make it look like it was in blizzard conditions, and it was actually snowing. But it adds to your whole stock of images. And it's, to a degree, it is cheating and setting things up, but that stands you in good stead subsequently. Sometimes hide work is quite pleasant when you're amongst the poppies and things like that, and I've spent some lovely days in hides. So these images are easy to take actually, because you actually know where that hoopoo's going. If you know where it's going, you don't rely on autofocus. You just watch the bird's behaviour. It's going to loop around and come into the nest hole. You know it's going to do that. You've seen it do it 20 times, so you don't turn autofocus off. You get someone, or you go out yourself and put your hand there, pre-focused on the line of where the bird is going to go. Pre-compose the camera and lock off the tripod. You can sit there with a cable release, sipping coffee, and then the birds repeatedly come round and you just fire a burst of shots every single time. We're in a digital age now, so storage is cheap, and it's spray and pray when you got a situation like this. But often if you're looking at it and you're experienced at seeing the flight line of birds, you can get these images really quickly. The next one, which should be coming up. This was on Tawny Owls, where they cut paths through the bracken. And it's a bit like Star Wars, the first film, the real first film in '77, when the X-Wings are going down to blow up the Death Star. These swallows will go through the bracken. Oh, I can't go forward, can I, because of the feedback. swallows will go through the bracken paths straight along there. So you do the same principle, camera on the ground, swallows fly about this far off the ground, hawking for insects, and you just sit there, press the button, fire a burst as they approach, and this was within my first 9 shots. I didn't get any more after that, but the job was done. So it's just seeing that problem and solving the problem. The one thing I've mastered is camouflage, because I was a solitary birder as a child as well, and it was at the time where it definitely wasn't cool to be a birder. So I learned to hide away, and I developed camouflage. Now when you put camouflage on, you can see me there, yeah? In between those trees. That's me waiting for barn owls. Now when you put this gear on, you feel really stupid. But don't worry, no one can see you. And I've actually had 2 people walk within a metre of me while I've been in this gear. And I used to say hello to people. But I learned not to. Because they just jump out of their skin. But in this gear, and I watch people photograph short-eared owls, barn owls, because they do fly diurnally at this time of year. And I am a little bit shocked at the fieldcraft, because they just end up bumping the owls from one spot to the other. All you got to do is buy some eBay camouflage, disappear. And I've had barn owl land within a metre of me before. This one wasn't within a metre. When it's within a metre, we're talking this close to me in camouflage. Photographically it's rubbish, because I can't swing round the camera or even focus within a metre. But as a personal experience, I've sat there watching a barn owl breathe, seeing its plumage rise and fall, and that is an incredibly special moment when your fieldcraft has got you so close to an animal like a barn owl. This situation, I bought an eBay special MP3 player, and I put mouse squeaks on it. And I put it in an old sock and buried it in some grass. This was at net, and it was on a remote control. And I walked about 30 metres from it and thought, I've never tested this before. I just want to see if the remote control works at this distance. So I got in the vehicle, which was 30 metres away, and I pressed the button to play the mouse squeaks. Within about 5 seconds, a barn owl flew directly above the MP3 player, landed in the branch above, and that's it. It looks like it's looking down, but as you all know, the facial discs are like parabolic discs to channel sound. It's actually listening to the mouse squeaks below. So I fired this shot off. That MP3 player has never worked since. But it worked on that occasion. So it involves a lot of problem solving. This is a Eurasian roller nest box in Kiskunság National Park in Hungary. And my friend Istvan Bartol, some of you may know him, been over there, he called me because 2 Scots owls had adopted this Eurasian roller owl. And he was really annoyed because he was doing a breeding program of roller, but he knew I loved owls, and so he called me to come and take the shots. And I arrived at the airport and I drove to this very site and set up a hide, but it's a glorified blue tip box, about 5 times the size, and we put a stick in front of it to try and make the perching look good, and it just didn't work at all. So on the first night, I'm not even going to show you the images because they were rubbish, but I had to solve the problem of getting the shots of Scots owls in and out of the nest and in flight. So I found bark strips, and what I did was, because the owls were in occupation, I just got the bark strips and I super glued them to the front of the box. I didn't nail them because the owls and their young were inside the box. I super glued them to the front of the box and the side, and you can see some wire just balled up on top to stop the owls landing on there. And that's just to channel exactly where the owls go. And once I'd super glued those on and set up, there's the first image. So it doesn't look like a glorified blue tick box anymore. And then the second image I got was that one. And so the job was done within about half an hour. So on the first night, timing hide 6 hours, no images. After solving the problem, timing hide half an hour, and I got the shots. Now, if there's any sort of trademark shot I have, it's probably low-level images of wildlife, where you're super low level, and I call this, like, if we've got a laser on here, yeah, we've got what I call the animal horizon. Normally that's put up halfway by people, they naturally compose it halfway, but I put it down the bottom of the frame. Personally, I think reflections are cliche, so I don't actually include them. But I mean, this could be Rye Harbour now, couldn't it? We've got 3 spoonbills there. But these are the shots I take, and I've developed several ways of doing it. And now let's move on to the next one. Blackwing still in the same situation, and the next one, Great Crested Grebe. I endured leeches the size of my finger all over me. This was probably the most disgusting situation I've ever taken a shot in. I was covered in leeches. When I was picked up by the same guy, Istvan, he was sort of squealing as he's pulling these leeches off my back. And it was horrible. And in the end, I was rolling in the grass trying to get rid of these things. And if you smash them off, they're full of your blood. And so you just got a splurge of blood everywhere. It's horrible. Anyone want to be a wildlife photographer? But this is how I took these shots. I developed a floating hide system. So that is just a floating platform with a dome over it, which I attached. There it is, there, I'm inside that little box there. And this I did a project on little grebes at Woods Mill. And I was out there for a whole breeding season, and they had 2 broods every morning from 4 o'clock. And I was in that box, walking around the lake at Woods Mill, photographing little grebes. But this is, anyone that's approached little grebes, you can see them from 50 metres, but you go to 40 metres and they dive under and they disappear. To get this close really takes some effort, but when you're in a floating hide, they don't give a damn. And I got to within a metre of them. I was right in on the nest site. And I think the next one we've got a film clip, because the one show heard about me. They didn't hear about 12, but I think the next image, that's us setting up for the one show, but the next one, I'm building this up, I don't think. This is the new version of the floating hide, which another wildlife photographer used, but we did it in the one show, which is the next image, which Adrian's going to press play on, if that's all right.
Little grebes are diving water birds, infamous for their aquatic ecology. The slightest disturbance and they make an instant exit. There's no doubt about it, little grebes are incredibly wary birds. And when you come to a lake like this, if they're here, guaranteed they'll pop up right over on the other bank. In fact, I've never come anywhere like this and got a decent photograph of them. So, I've enlisted the help of wildlife photographer David Plummer. David invents ingenious ways to get close to his subjects, and he's got just the thing to get me close to a little grebe. David, you're going to have to explain this bizarre contraption to me.
Yeah, it does look a little bit strange, but it's actually a floating hide. It's very effective at getting close to some of the much shyer birds that are out there. To get good shots, we've got to get close. I took these last season.
Wow.
So moorhen, great crested grebe. It's the low angle that gives it an intimacy.
How close do you think you are there?
Within 2 metres.
Do you think we're going to get anything like this today?
I'm hopeful. Yeah, very.
David has built me my own floating hide, and I'm planning to test it out on the lake at Whitworth Arboretum, where we've spotted a little Greek nest. So it's time to prepare our hides, get into our dry suits, and head out onto the water. It's a whole different perspective being out here on the water. I feel like I'm in the swamplands of Louisiana, not Surrey. This is a pretty unusual way to start the day out photographing, but I'm intrigued to see how it's going to work. I may look like a talking bush, but as I'm not casting a human silhouette, the bird shouldn't see me as a threat. At least, that's the plan. What's great about this hide is I'm just not fixed in one position. I can just really easily swing around. Oh, crikey. I'm so stuck. I've got my foot caught in between some branches. Now there's a little duckling coming just in front of me here. I haven't reached the grebe yet, but the duckling could be an ideal opportunity to begin to get to grips with being in this hide. I'm completely covert. None of the birds seem to mind me being here. I feel like a spy on the lake. I can actually communicate with David using walkie-talkies. So David, do you think it'd be a good time to stop? Do you think this is the moment we should just see whether she's happy with us?
She looks pretty relaxed, so I would just stay there, hang fire for a little while.
Stopping at about 5 metres away from the nest, I start to take my first images. This is a typical little grebe nest, a floating platform made of leaves, close to the water's edge. The adult birds cover the eggs with the leaves, protecting them from predators. It's a beautiful day, but the trees are blocking out the light, so I'm going to use something us photographers call fill flash, and that's just enough flash.
I couldn't explain it any better than that anyway. So they are brutal and you can't get involved. This was a situation where an adult cheetah mother brought impala fawn back to the young, and you learn what play is. I've got feedback on that. What play is in animals, it's learning ways to kill. And they played with this fawn for about 40 minutes, and they were even licking it and just batting it around, not killing it, for 40 minutes. As an experience, it was pretty brutal because all of a sudden it switched the other way and they just surrounded it and ate it. But it did allow me to get incredible shots of cheetah chases. But one of the shots of my life is this one. This is actually a real adult male cheetah at full chase going for a wildebeest, and this was a case of prediction, moving away from the cheetah and predicting where they're going to go, and being able to change the camera settings as you're driving along on off-road. And it was, as soon as we got into position, the chase was on and the cheetah just burst through the bushes in front of me. And I just fired a burst of shots as it went round. Again, it was spray and pray, and then once you've got the shot, it's hooray. And yeah, I got 25 shots in focus of cheetah all 4 feet off the ground. Another situation, when lionesses, they very often have their young away from the pride because the pride can be very aggressive and dangerous, so the young, and if the mother needs to move them, she will take a long time moving them. I had to wait 4 hours for this to pick up the second youngster, but it's worth it in the end. Sun goes down in Africa and the moon comes up in Brazil, although this could be net, couldn't it, almost? This is Jaguars stork nest with moonrise. It's actually moonset. but there's a full moon behind. And if you can play on this, it can get quite exciting, forms of transport. This is in Brazil. Now, Penny and Dave Green are here. They've done this journey with me and didn't get the end result. Sorry, guys. Never failed to get it since. This is male Jaguar. Now, stupidly, the first Jaguar I found, I got off the boat and I foot stalked it, as is my way, to within about 12 metres. And that's the next image coming up. That's the first Jaguar I foot stalked, and that was her reaction. It was the most stupid thing I've ever done in my life. But as far as fieldcraft goes, I mean, she had two options, well, three actually: eat me or run away, and she did neither of those. And I realised as soon as I foot stalked her and I put my head over the parapet of sand between us, there was nothing there between us at all, just me and the Jaguar. They're about the size of a lioness in this region. And she just stared at me, the lower jaw came forward, and I don't know if you remember the first line from Four Weddings and a Funeral, when he realises he's late for the wedding. I won't repeat it, but that was my response. And I just thought, what the hell am I going to do? And I just put my hand up like that. I just, as a leopard would do if it's not hunting, they show the underside of their tail. And she didn't eat me, she didn't run away, she just started grooming. And I stayed photographing her for 2 hours till sunset with a Jaguar. It was the biggest compliment the natural world's ever paid me. I'm going to skip forward because we have got short of time. This is sunbitten. I have gone for a reflection here. The thing to be cautious of when doing these birds in Brazil are the alligators, the caiman. And Dave and Penny Green know I get close to alligators because I had one go for my hands while I was filming another one before. We were on transparency film then, so I haven't got copies of them, but the alligator climbed right over my equipment. And again, it was the first line from Four Weddings and a Funeral. I've still got my hand. And here's an ocelot, a much smaller cat. Solving the problem with this cat was fishermen dump their fish scraps. They go fishing during the day and then clean the fish off in the evening, dump the fish scraps on the sand, and a pair of ocelot just come out and opportune on the fish scraps. And so they got very used to people, and I would just sit there in a little stall with a camera on a tripod waiting for them to come out. And it was actually a street light that illuminated this, created the natural light for that. I did use a floating hide in Brazil once, but the risk from caiman, piranha and anaconda was a little bit too much. But I did get this shot, but you just feel nervous with piranha around all the time. And anything that feels like a branch, you think is an anaconda. And I've found a 10-metre anaconda in this area. And I don't know, I know what's going to be on my gravestone. He won't do that again. So tropical screech owl at the nest site. Every time a vehicle goes past this track, this owl would pop out. So I just waited at the bottom of the tree, and every time it popped out, I would photograph it. It got quite used to me. With this image, this is burrowing owl. My friend Ricardo drove the van along the track next to the owl, and the sliding door of the van was opposite the owl, and I jumped out of the van as we were alongside it. I lay on the ground, pulled a screen sheet over my head, camera on the ground pointing at the owl. The van pulls forward, revealing me, but I look like a rock. But he's a little confused and a little bit interested. I take a burst of shots, the van reverses, I get back in. Zero disturbance to the owl, and a nice intimate shot of burrowing owl at the time. So, a little story. I thought it's about time I had an idea. I'll achieve something. A book. So, I had a year of compiling this book with all my images. It was actually images from the previous 7 years for a certain reason. And eventually Penguin Random House published this book. And I was a bit ambitious about your money you make from books. You make nothing, but I thought I did at that time, so I had a strawberry with a glass of champagne. I thought I'd hit the big time. But I did go to Media City, and here's that image you've already seen. This is me having my makeup done. But they did give me a Jaguar apron, which I thought was nice. And then I was on BBC Breakfast with Naga, and I can't remember this, Charlie State. And as a result of this, I came out of this interview about the book I produced, and Penguin Random House phoned me and said, look at the Amazon rankings. And so I was #1 bestseller in wild animals on Amazon. 20 minutes later, they phoned me again and said, look again. And I was #1 across the whole of Amazon, above John le Carré and Dan Brown. I was there for about 5 minutes. But you only need to be a #1 bestseller for a second to say you're a #1 bestseller. So I've dined out on that ever since. But coming back to Earth with a tawny owl, some of you know I'm madly passionate about tawny owls. And I've switched to film now, and I've filmed tawny owls, and it's been a very steep learning curve, but I've been helped by a lot of people through the process. There we go. So here's one of my tawny owls, and I'm going to skip through this because I'm very aware of the time. This is one of the shots of my life. I call it the last thing a small mammal sees if it's lucky. A tawny owl coming in for the kill. But I filmed these owls. These are actually in my garden. And the reason why this is called Henfield Hall to the Albert Hall is I filmed Tawny Owls for the Wild Owls series, which was narrated by David Attenborough. And the premiere of this was shown at the Royal Geographic Society, which is right next door to the Albert Hall, so it's a tenuous link, but it's right next door. And I was sat in the row behind David Attenborough as he narrated the Tawny Owl section of Wild Owls, which was filmed in my garden, which I thought was pretty special, which is why I call it Henfield Hall to the Albert Hall. Then last year, Hamza Yassin came and we filmed Tawny Owls in my garden. Have we got time to show, if you go to 3905, that'll do.
As far as I'm concerned, one of, if not the richest in Britain.
That's Simon King, we don't want him.
Bushes are an exciting example of how if you restore a landscape, wildlife will return. And the same can even be true in a suburban garden.
I love this red canopy.
David Plummer has invited me to his wildlife garden for an unforgettable encounter with a nighttime predator.
So this is my favourite place anywhere, actually. I've travelled all over the world for work, and my absolute favourite place is right here in the evenings, next to the pond in Sussex.
David's work as a photographer and naturalist has taken him around the world, but the haven he's created here means more to him than anything he's seen elsewhere.
I mean, it's no secret I've got Parkinson's disease, which is I've dealt with for 14 years so far, pretty well. It's getting worse, and I know my world geographically is getting smaller. But the natural world is around us, everywhere. And if we create habitats, we can get as much pleasure out of this pond here in the UK as you can in the marsh in Brazil. There's every level of natural history, from apex predators to prey species, and so although it's getting geographically smaller, my mind is still as absorbed and obsessed with the natural world.
I must admit, you have a fabulous garden.
Thank you. It wasn't like it when I moved here. It was a chain link fence each side,
Yeah.
flat grass, mowed to within an inch of its life, and the oak tree, and that was it. In the first month I lived here, I counted one butterfly, common blue. I think a couple of years ago I counted 12 species of butterflies in the meadow down here.
It's slightly making me emotional to think that you said this is the last spot you're going to be living in. You want it to be perfect.
Yeah. Perfect for me. And
I think more than just you, it's perfect for you and the wildlife that you attract.
yeah.
Thanks to David's passion and dedication, every night a pair of wild tawny owls visit him.
His garden for about 4 years. So to sort of film it and have that on BBC One, narrated by David Attenborough, was pretty special.
Can you give me a rundown of what's in the habitat?
So the plan is, it's a wild bird, so I do it.
That'll do.
My heart is absolutely
What just happened? That was phenomenal. That was absolutely phenomenal.
I call them the killer angels. They are apex, nocturnal avian predator. And they are just so gorgeous. It is a case of if you put it there, wildlife will come.
Amrit,
So I hope you like that. It's pretty special doing that in your garden. So as a result of that, I made an independent film with Katie Mayhew as the camerawoman that I worked with on Wild Owls. And what happened with the next film, I was also advocating for disability. We did quite well. Something's gone. Can people hear me okay? We did quite well. Step back this way, yeah? Is that okay? But what was the best award we got for this was only a short documentary, and it was quite amazing. We got Oh no. Can we go
I
on?
was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease 13 years ago,
Sorry.
almost to the day.
Next slide. Yeah, it's quite amazing to be nominated for a Best Film Award at Cannes Film Festival. And it's all come as a result of just learning those skills as a kid. And it's Maya was talking about, you know, feeding your passion, and that, I think if we can encourage young people to really feed their passion and follow what they really love, you can actually achieve things. And so after this one, making this and it being nominated at Cannes, I made an independent one about
When the film made
about disability persecution in Kenya. Again, it won a few awards, but I uncovered 5 murders during this, making of this film in Kenya. And the greatest achievement I got from it was I was invited to the House of Commons to present it to the all-parliamentary committee about disability persecution in lower economy countries. There are thousands of people being burnt alive in Africa for having disability. And I mean, just filming and photography has been a vehicle for me just to achieve this, which was the most important job I've done. And I've been invited back because I've got to present it to the Foreign Secretary so that sanctions can be issued against nations that allow this to happen. But it's all been on a vehicle of basically being a wildlife photographer in Sussex. And so I've come back, and it's nice to be speaking to SOS, because that's why it was called Henfield Hall to the Albert Hall and back. And I just want to say thank you. I hope you've had a good conference. And so thank you to all the organisations and communities that have helped me over the years. So thank you very much.
There we go. If you didn't know David's photographs before, then I think you're going to go home pretty amazed. If you didn't know about David's work with disability and Parkinson's disease, it's just as spine-tingling, isn't it, what he's managed to do. Have you got any questions for David before we close? Yes, in the front.
Go on my website, which is davidplummer.co.uk, and there's links to all of them. I don't know about the 12 though.
I've looked everywhere for it. Somebody find it. Any final questions? Well, I think you'll agree that was an amazing way for us to end the conference today. I found it quite emotional, actually. So we'll give you thanks to David. Our way, we hand over to your president to close us out at what I think has been an amazing day today.
Great, thank you.